Have you ever wondered why so many beloved American dishes simply vanished from our tables? From golden cornbread baked over open fires to sweet potato puddings born from native harvests, these foods once told the story of who we were. But somewhere along the way, convenience replaced tradition and memories got lost with it. In this video, we're turning back time to rediscover the forgotten recipes that built America's soul. Stay with us till the end, you might just taste your childhood again. And if you love uncovering the flavors of the past, hit like, subscribe, and keep these memories alive. 1. Southern skillet cornbread. Picture a cast iron skillet warming on a wood-burning stove, the scent of cornmeal rising with the crackle of firewood. In small farmhouses across the American South, this humble bread wasn't just a side dish, it was survival. Long before white flour became common, native tribes had already mastered the art of turning ground maize into nourishment. Settlers borrowed, adapted, and made it their own, but the soul of cornbread always belonged to the land itself. Each loaf carried the memory of harvest golden fields of corn shimmering beneath the autumn Sunday. Families gathered passing slices that were crisp at the edge yet tender within, dripping with butter or honey. It was food meant to be shared, a bridge between native ingenuity and frontier necessity. As industrial mills took over and boxed mixes filled grocery aisles, that simple ritual faded. The cast iron pans grew cold, replaced by convenience. Still, when a skillet hisses with fresh batter, something ancient awakens the same warmth that once gathered generations around the hearth. Do you remember a kitchen where the smell of hot cornbread meant comfort, laughter, and the sound of home? 2. Sweet potato pineapple pudding. Imagine a kitchen bathed in the golden light of late afternoon where mashed sweet potatoes swirl together with the bright scent of crushed pineapple. In the heart of mid-century America, this pudding was a quiet celebration of old roots meeting new dreams. Sweet potatoes had long been sacred to native farmers, a gift from the earth that sustained families through lean winters. By the 1970s, they found new life in casseroles like this one, where canned pineapple brought a whisper of the tropics to Sunday tables. The taste was pure comfort, warm caramelized sweetness with a touch of tang, baked until the edges turned amber and the center glowed like sunset. It was often served beside ham or turkey during holidays, yet its spirit reached back far earlier to a time when food came straight from the soil, not from a store shelf. Today, many swap the canned fruit for fresh chunks or drizzle maple syrup instead of brown sugar. But the heart of it remains unchanged, a marriage of earth and sun, humble and bright. If you're enjoying this trip through America's forgotten kitchens, hit like and subscribe for more stories that keep these flavors and memories alive. 3. Squash casserole. Close your eyes and picture a summer garden heavy with yellow squash, its vines curling through rows of beans and corn. The ancient trio the native people called the Three Sisters. In those early gardens lay the foundation of what would later become a Southern classic, the squash casserole. By the time it reached the American table in the 1970s, this dish had evolved into a creamy, oven-baked comfort layered with sautéed onions, butter, and just enough cheese to bind it all together. It wasn't fancy food, but it was full of love, a way to gather the harvest into something that felt like home. Grandmothers baked it for Sunday suppers, using what the land offered. The flavor was delicate yet rich, the texture melting softly beneath the crunchy topping of breadcrumbs. Every bite tasted of community and gratitude. As fresh produce gave way to frozen packs and instant meals, the slow patience of scratch cooking began to fade. Yet this casserole still whispers the story of seasons when people ate by the rhythm of the earth. Between the cornbread's rustic charm, the pudding's sweetness, and this garden-born dish, which one reminds you most of your childhood kitchen or a meal shared with someone you love. 4. Baked ziti Depression-era style. Picture a modest kitchen during the hard years after the Great Depression, sunlight slipping through thin curtains, a pot simmering quietly on the stove. In those days, families made miracles out of scraps, and baked ziti was one such creation. Though its roots were Italian, its heart was all American, stretching every ounce of food to feed the whole table. Ziti pasta, sturdy and simple, was mixed with bits of meat, tomato sauce, and a handful of cheese when you were lucky enough to have some. It baked slowly in a battered tin dish, filling the house with a smell of hope. Each bubbling corner carried a promise that a shared meal could hold a family together through uncertainty. By the 1970s, this dish had become a weeknight staple across working-class homes. Modern cooks might use ricotta or extra herbs, but the spirit remains the same, turning little into plenty. You can almost hear the scrape of metal spoons against the dish, laughter echoing over cracked plates. In its humble warmth lies the memory of resilience, when flavor was measured not by wealth, but by togetherness. 5. Cheesy scalloped potatoes. Steam rises from an old enamel dish, the air thick with the scent of melting cheese and slow-baked potatoes. This was the kind of side dish that didn't just sit quietly beside the roast, it stole the spotlight. Born from thrift and tradition, scalloped potatoes carried the heart of farm kitchens across America, yet their roots ran deeper, tracing back to the resourcefulness shared by native and settler alike, using every crop, wasting nothing. Each slice was layered with care, thin ribbons of potato brushed with butter, a splash of cream, and a whisper of nutmeg. As it baked, the edges crisp into golden armor, while the inside stayed tender, warm, and soulful. Children waited for the sound of the oven door, knowing the crust would be fought over before supper even began. By the 1970s, boxed versions and powdered mixes made the dish faster, but not better. What was once an act of love turned into convenience. Yet, when made from scratch, it still tastes like family. Between the ziti's perseverance and these creamy layers of comfort, we're reminded how food once connected generations through patience and care. If these memories warm your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from America's forgotten tables. 6. Pork casserole stew style. Imagine a chilly evening in a small farmhouse, the windows fogged from a slow-cooking pot that's been simmering since dawn. Inside, the aroma of pork, onions, and white beans fills the air, a scent that once defined comfort across rural America. This casserole, thick and humble, came from the same spirit that guided native stews. Nothing wasted, everything shared. Families layered brown pork with garden vegetables, a bit of tomato and broth so rich it seemed to hum with warmth. It wasn't just dinner, it was endurance in a dish born from seasons of scarcity and faith in the land. Each spoonful carried the story of people who made do with what they had, turning simplicity into sustenance. By the 1970s, electric crock pots made this process easier, yet something sacred was lost. The slow patience of stirring, tasting, waiting. Modern versions might add wine or spices, but the true flavor comes from time itself. Through these humble stews, we see how resilience once simmered on every stovetop, binding hearts as tightly as family recipes. Between the potatoes, cream, and this stew's depth, which one feels more like the flavor of home to you? 7. Porcupine meatballs. Picture a kitchen from the mid-20th century, the radio humming softly, the air thick with the smell of tomato sauce. On the stovetop, small meatballs bubble in a pan, each one studded with tiny grains of rice that peek through like quills on a porcupine. Despite its playful name, this dish told a story of resourcefulness, born in the Depression and carried proudly into the 1970s. Families made it from simple staples, ground beef, rice, onions, and canned tomato soup. It was cheap, filling, and somehow felt festive even on a weekday. Children loved the name, adults loved the comfort, and everyone loved how it stretched a pound of meat into a feast. The texture was soft and familiar, tender rice blending into the meat, the sauce rich and tangy served over mashed potatoes or bread to catch every drop. Today, the dish has faded from modern tables, replaced by takeout boxes and frozen dinners. Yet one bite of porcupine meatballs can still carry you back to a time when thrift was an art and a simple supper could bring laughter to a weary home. Its quiet magic still lingers in memory, waiting to be tasted again. 8. Pulled pork with cherry cola sauce. Close your eyes and picture a backyard cookout somewhere in the American South, cicadas humming smoke curling through warm summer air and the steady pop of a slow cooker lid lifting. Inside, tender pork has been simmering for hours in a dark sweet sauce made from cherry cola and barbecue spices. It's the kind of smell that draws neighbors to the fence and makes time slow down. While cherry cola might sound like a novelty, its sweetness echoed something older, the way native cooks once used wild cherries or maple sap to glaze their meats. By the 1970s, this recipe had become a southern treasure, marrying soda pop culture with the timeless art of slow cooking. The cola caramelized into a smoky syrup, coating the pork until it fell apart at a touch. Served on buttered rolls or beside baked beans, it was comfort and creativity in one bite. Today, many swap soda for real fruit juice, but the spirit remains, turning everyday ingredients into joy. Between the hearty pork stew and this tangy, playful roast, one spoke to survival, the other to celebration. Which one would have sat on your family's table when the weekend finally came? 9. Shepherd's pie, frontier-style picture. The last light of day falling over a prairie cabin, smoke rising from a small iron stove. Inside, a dish of mashed potatoes and meat bubbles, quietly a frontier version of shepherd's pie. Though it began as a British peasant meal, it took on a new identity across the American plains, blending the hardiness of settlers with the earth-born wisdom of native farmers who taught them how to live off the land. Ground lamb or beef was layered with vegetables, often corn, carrots, or beans, and sealed under a crust of buttery potatoes. It was food for endurance, made from leftovers, stretched to feed every hungry mouth. In each bite lay the story of survival and adaptation, cultures meeting, recipes changing, yet the purpose staying the same: to nourish and to endure. By the 1970s, boxed versions filled grocery shelves, but none could match the taste of one baked slowly in a wood-heated kitchen. Its golden top still symbolizes what families once shared a full heart even in lean times. Between the cherry sweetness of pulled pork and the sturdy pie of the plains, which would you call the taste of perseverance? 10. Stuffed deviled pork chops. Imagine a Sunday table set in a modest home, floral curtains, polished silverware, and the sound of something sizzling in the oven. Out comes a dish of pork chops, thick and golden, each filled with a savory breadcrumb stuffing spiced with mustard and herbs. The aroma alone could stop conversation. The term deviled had nothing to do with sin, but with spice, a word once used to describe bold flavors. By the 1970s, this twist on traditional chops turned a cheap cut into a feast, proof that with creativity, even the humblest ingredients could feel luxurious. It was a dish that carried both pride and practicality, a nod to the old ways of stretching food and a wink toward modern flair. Families savored it with mashed potatoes or green beans, while the sharp mustard flavor lingered like a signature. Today it survives in vintage cookbooks waiting to be rediscovered. Beneath its crisp crust lies a reminder. Sometimes the most memorable meals aren't grand, they're simply made with heart. If you've been savoring these stories so far, hit like and subscribe. Your support keeps these forgotten kitchens alive. 11. Peanut butter bread. The year was the early 1940s and America was still learning how to cook with limits. Picture a mother stirring thick peanut butter into flour and baking powder. No yeast, no eggs to spare. What emerged was a dense, nutty loaf that filled the air with warmth, a simple miracle born from necessity. Peanut butter, once a luxury, had become a pantry hero. Rich in protein, it kept families fed during wartime rationing. By the 1970s, the recipe reappeared in community cookbooks, symbolizing the unbroken thread of ingenuity that ran through American kitchens. The taste was rustic, lightly sweet, crumbly, and perfect with butter or jam. It wasn't fancy, but it carried pride, the kind that comes from making something out of almost nothing. Modern bakers sometimes add honey or cinnamon, but the soul remains the same, perseverance baked into every slice. From the stuffed chops richness to this humble loaf, both share one truth: food once meant effort, memory, and meaning far deeper than convenience. 12. Cheese souffle loaf picture, a quiet suburban kitchen in the early 1970s. Sunlight drifting through gingham curtains, the smell of melting cheddar filling the air. On the counter sits a loaf pan, not with bread, but with something more: daring cheese souffle loaf. It looked refined, but it was born from the same spirit of practicality that guided generations before, taking simple farm ingredients and turning them into comfort. Eggs, flour, milk, and grated cheese came together into a golden, airy bake that rose high without fuss. It was the home cook's shortcut to elegance, a humble nod to French sophistication with an American heart. Each slice was light yet hearty, warm enough to melt butter and memories alike. While real soufflés demanded patience and precision, this loaf made indulgence possible for everyone. Today, few remember it lost to diet trends and fast breakfasts. But when baked in a quiet kitchen, its scent recalls a time when mealtime still meant pause, presence, and pride. From the nutty crumb of peanut butter bread to this delicate loaf, both whisper the same truth: that comfort doesn't need luxury, only love and care. 13. Biscuits and sausage gravy. Now imagine dawn breaking over a southern farmhouse. The rooster calls and a cast iron pan already hisses on the stove. Flaky biscuits bake in the oven while sausage gravy simmers thick and peppery, ready to be poured over the steaming bread. It's the sound, the smell, and the sight of morning comfort. This dish came from thrift, the same resourceful roots that shaped native and frontier cooking. Flour, milk, and bits of pork became a meal that could sustain a laborer all day. The gravy's creamy texture, speckled with spice, turned plain biscuits into something extraordinary. By the 1970s, it was a breakfast staple across diners and family tables, linking generations through taste and memory. Even today, one bite can bring you back to a wooden porch coffee, steaming in hand, watching the first light hit the fields. Between the airy souffle loaf and these hearty biscuits, both remind us how American kitchens once turned simplicity into soul. 14. Corned beef hash baked picture, a skillet filled with chopped potatoes, onions, and bits of salty corned beef, a working man's meal turned family favorite. This dish began on army rations and factory lunch breaks, but by the 1970s, it had found its way into every home as a breakfast casserole baked until golden and crisp. It spoke of resilience, born from leftovers, perfected by necessity. Families mixed in eggs or cheese, whatever they had, to make it stretch further. The smell was unmistakable, savory, smoky, and deeply comforting. Corned beef hash bake captured the pulse of mid-century America: hard work, early mornings, and the joy of feeding a crowd on a modest budget. While convenience cans later replaced the slow simmered version, the true flavor belonged to those who cooked it by hand. When served hot from the oven, its crust crackled beneath the spoon, a sound that felt like home. From the biscuit's warmth to this hearty bake, we taste the story of a nation that found comfort in the simplest meals. 15. Tuna noodle casserole. Picture the hum of an electric oven in a small 1960s kitchen, the walls lined with floral wallpaper. Inside a casserole bubbles gently tuna noodles and mushroom soup bound by a blanket of cheese and breadcrumbs. Born in the post-war years, it was the pride of the modern homemaker, quick, affordable, and nourishing. But its story began with something older, the wartime need to make meals from shelf-stable cans and rations. Tuna noodle casserole embodied a culture of resourcefulness, especially among women who balanced work, family, and a kitchen that had to do it all. The smell of that creamy sauce drifting through the air meant dinner was ready and life, at least for the night, was under control. By the 1970s, the dish had become an American icon, its recipe scribbled in every community cookbook. Today, healthier versions use fresh fish and homemade broth, yet the soul remains unchanged comfort built from care. Between the corned beef hash and this creamy classic, which one reminds you more of those nights when dinner brought everyone to the same table? 16. Chilled fruit soup. Now picture the height of summer sunlight spilling over a bowl of cool pink-hued soup. Strawberries, peaches, or melon blended smooth with yogurt and honey, chilled until the first spoonful felt like a sigh of relief. This was the 1970s quiet rebellion against heavy desserts, a return to nature, freshness, and simplicity. But its roots ran deep. Long before the health craze, native cooks had already turned foraged berries into refreshing drinks and cold broths. This soup carried that same rhythm of the land, vibrant, nourishing, pure. It wasn't about indulgence, but about balance, letting fruit speak for itself. Served at picnics or summer luncheons, it captured the era's fascination with wellness and global flavors inspired by European and Asian traditions. Modern chefs might dress it with mint or chia seeds, yet its essence remains timeless. Between casseroles and cobblers, this dish feels like a breath of fresh air, the sweetness of life in its simplest form. 17. Candied carrots. The kitchen glows amber with the scent of butter, honey, and maple syrup melting over tender carrots. For decades, this side dish sat quietly on holiday tables, but its history stretches much further back to native traditions of sweetening with natural sap and forest honey. In the mid-20th century, candied carrots were a bridge between generations. Children loved their glossy sweetness. Adults loved their meaning, transforming a humble root into celebration. Each bite shimmered with nostalgia, that tender balance between earth and sweetness. By the 1970s, the dish had faded behind flashier casseroles and instant mixes, yet it never truly vanished. Some memories cling too tightly to let go. Modern cooks now revive it with fresh herbs or a touch of citrus, rediscovering its simple magic. When you taste that soft sweetness today, you're tasting history, a moment when food didn't need to impress, only to comfort. 18. Blueberry cobbler crockpot style. Imagine a summer night in a small town kitchen, the hum of a new slow cooker blending with the smell of ripe berries and sugar. Blueberry cobbler was a dessert that connected the old ways with new tools. Before ovens and timers, native foragers had gathered berries to bake beneath hot stones or over campfires. The earliest cobblers of the continent. By the 1970s, crockpots had replaced coals, but the purpose remained the same: to savor the season's gifts. The filling bubbled like midnight sky beneath a golden crust, and the first spoonful stained lips blue and hearts warm. Families would scoop it out steaming, serve it with cream, and call it love. Though boxed mixes later simplified it, the real flavor belonged to patience, letting time coax sweetness from nature's hand. Between the carrot's glow and this deep blue comfort, both whisper the same truth. Joy once came slowly, and that's what made it last. 19. Apple cider unpasteurized farm press. Picture autumn in the countryside, the crunch of leaves, the press of apples grinding under a wooden wheel. Outflows cloudy, cider cool and raw, poured straight into a mason jar without label or warning. Before refrigeration or pasteurization, this was how families tasted the harvest, pure, earthy, alive. The cider's tang carried the soul of the orchard, each sip a mixture of sweetness, tartness, and time. Children sipped it cold, adults warmed it with cinnamon and clove by the evening fire. It wasn't just a drink, it was a ritual, a communion with the season. By the 1990s, safety laws had turned this tradition cautious, and fresh-pressed cider became rare. Yet those who remember it recall its bite, its froth, its honest imperfection. It's more than juice, it's memory in liquid form. Between the berry cobbler's warmth and cider's chill, which would you choose on a crisp October afternoon when nostalgia feels closest to the skin? 20. Brown butter sweet potato pie. Picture a cozy kitchen filled with the scent of roasted sweet potatoes and melting butter, turning nut brown in a cast iron pan. This pie, rich and caramel colored, carried the legacy of both native harvest and southern tradition. Sweet potatoes had long been sacred, the earth's golden gift rooted deep in the soil of survival. By the 1970s, families baked this pie during holidays, its silky filling kissed with maple syrup or dark sugar. Each slice told a story of patience, of hands that mashed and stirred without haste. The flavor was pure nostalgia, warm, spiced, tender. While store-bought pies later took over supermarket shelves, none could match the one that came from a grandmother's oven, edges slightly burnt, the crust cracking like old parchment. The brown butter added depth, the kind of flavor that makes you close your eyes for a moment longer. It wasn't just dessert, it was gratitude baked into form. If the cider reminded us of autumn's chill, this pie reminds us of its heart, sweet, enduring, and impossibly human. Archie. Chicken in a biscuit casserole. Imagine an evening in a busy 1970s household. The clatter of dishes, the hum of television in the background, and the comforting smell of chicken and biscuits baking together in a single dish. It was a recipe born of modern convenience yet filled with old-fashioned love. Shredded chicken rested in a creamy sauce topped with golden biscuit dough that puffed into soft clouds as it baked. It was hearty, affordable, and felt like a hug after a long day. The idea traced back to the casseroles of rural kitchens where cooks layered leftovers with care rather than waste. Though the canned soup and dough made it easy, the spirit came from generations before, from the hands that turned scarcity into comfort. Today's health-conscious versions may trade condensed soup for homemade sauce, but the soul remains unchanged. Some dishes feed the stomach, this one fed belonging. Its aroma still lingers like a memory you can almost taste. 22. Hamburger potato baked. Picture a cold winter evening in the heartland, a mother layering sliced potatoes, onions, and ground beef into a battered casserole dish. It's a humble scene, yet it defined countless American dinners during the 1970s. This was hamburger potato bake, the working family's answer to warmth. Born from thrift, it stretched a single pound of beef into a meal for many. Canned soup added creaminess, cheese brought richness, and the oven did the rest. The magic wasn't just in the flavor, but in the togetherness. It inspired families gathering around a bubbling dish, stories shared between bites. As convenience food took hold, the patience to layer and bake slowly disappeared. Yet few aromas can rival that of this dish when pulled from the oven, smoky, savory, and familiar as an embrace. It's a reminder that sometimes ordinary ingredients carry extraordinary love. Between chicken's softness and beef's heartiness, which one feels more like home to you? 23. Church supper, hot dish, tater tot, casserole. Now, picture a small town church basement on a Sunday evening, long tables lined with Pyrex dishes, laughter echoing through the room. At the center sits the hot dish, a creamy mix of beef, corn, and soup, topped with a golden crown of tater tots. This was more than food. It was fellowship baked in a pan. Born in the Midwest's Lutheran communities, hot dish became a symbol of hospitality and community resilience. During the 1970s, no potluck or funeral supper was complete without it. It was easy, filling, and comforting, a taste of belonging that transcended recipes. Each scoop brought warmth, both literal and emotional. Today, chefs may reinvent it with gourmet touches, but none can replicate the laughter and kindness that came with the original. Between weeknight casseroles and church potlucks, food wasn't just sustenance, it was the glue that held neighbors together. 24. Green bean casserole. The Thanksgiving table gleamed with dishes, but none spoke more to American tradition than green bean casserole. Created in 1955 by a Campbell's home economist, it became the nation's most beloved side dish by the 70s. It was simplicity made sacred, tender green beans, creamy mushroom soup, and crisp fried onions baked into perfection. But beneath that simplicity lay a deeper truth. It represented family unity, the blending of convenience and care. Even those who rarely cooked could bring this dish and feel proud part of something larger. Every forkful tasted like holiday joy, the crunch of onions breaking through soft beans and nostalgia. Over time, lighter versions appeared, but none could replace the one made by a grandmother's steady hand. When the casserole hit the table, conversation paused because everyone knew what came next, a taste of home. 25. Pot roast, American family style. Picture Sunday afternoon, sunlight pouring through lace curtains, the scent of slow braised beef and vegetables filling every corner. Pot roast wasn't just dinner, it was ritual. In countless American homes, it marked the week's one day of rest, the meal that gathered everyone back to the same table. Tough cuts of beef simmered for hours with onions, carrots, and potatoes until they turned tender enough to fall apart at the touch of a fork. The broth grew rich and deep, a reflection of the patience that made it. This wasn't fast food, it was food that rewarded time and care. Though modern life has rushed past such moments, the spirit of the pot roast endures, a quiet reminder that some flavors can't be hurried. If you're still savoring these memories of warmth and togetherness, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these old American kitchens alive for generations to come. 26. Watergate cake picture, the bright green shimmer of pistachio pudding folded into a soft, fluffy cake, a dessert that made gossip sweeter during the 1970s. The Watergate cake wasn't just food, it was a cultural wink at the nation's most talked about scandal. Some said it got its name from the political hearings, others from clever marketers at General Foods. Either way, it became a potluck legend. Boxed cake mix, instant pudding, whipped topping, it was convenience disguised as elegance. Housewives could bake it in under an hour and still turn heads at every luncheon. Its nutty sweetness and pastel color made it the life of any gathering. Today, people recreate it with real pistachios and homemade frosting, yet its charm endures, sweet, slightly mysterious, and entirely American. Every slice tells of an age when even dessert carried a story. From the Sunday pot roast to this cheeky green confection, both reveal how food can mirror history itself, sometimes serious, sometimes playful, but always unforgettable. 27. Crown jewel dessert, broken glass cake. Imagine a dessert so dazzling it looked like stained glass in a church window, bright cubes of gelatin floating in a creamy citrus-tinted cloud. This was crown jewel dessert, the showstopper of the 1970s dinner party. Made from boxes of Jell-O whipped topping and condensed milk, it was an edible kaleidoscope that captured the era's fascination with convenience and color. Guests gasped when it arrived, sparkling under the chandelier light, proof that beauty didn't have to come from a bakery. Its roots stretch back to the mid-century love affair with gelatin molds, but this version felt joyful, almost playful. Modern cooks might use natural fruit gels or yogurt bases, yet none matched the retro magic of its jewel-toned wobble. Like Watergate cake, it was a dessert that made people talk not about politics this time, but about joy itself. 28. Tang Pie picture, a world where space travel was new, astronauts were heroes, and powdered drinks promised the future. Out of that optimism came Tang Pie, a no-bake wonder blending sweetened condensed milk, whipped topping, and bright orange tang powder. It was the taste of the space age, literally. Housewives loved its simplicity. Children loved its electric flavor. Served cold in a graham cracker crust, it tasted like citrus, sunshine, light, and futuristic. Yet beneath its neon glow was something deeply human, the hope that progress could also taste good. By the 1970s, it graced every church, social, and summer picnic. Today, real citrus has replaced tang in most recipes, but the nostalgia remains. Each bite feels like a postcard from a time when America dreamed beyond the stars and dessert joined the mission. Between the jeweled dessert and this space-age pie, one sparkles with the past, the other with possibility. Which one would you rather taste again? 29. Divinity candy. The holidays once began with the sound of sugar boiling and egg whites whipping to a glossy cloud. That was Divinity, a candy so light it seemed to float. Made with corn syrup, sugar, and a handful of pecans, it was part science, part faith. One wrong turn in humidity and the batch would fail. But when done right, it was heaven itself. Grandmothers passed the skill like sacred knowledge stirring under the soft glow of Christmas lights. Each piece dropped onto wax paper, cooled into a snow-white puff that melted on the tongue. By the 1970s, store-bought sweets began to take over, but Divinity never disappeared entirely. It lived on in memory, the taste of winter magic, the sound of laughter in warm kitchens. Where Tang Pie celebrated the future, Divinity guarded the past, both sweet in their own ways, both unforgettable. 30. Snowball Cake's Hostess Era. Now imagine opening a lunchbox in 1978 and finding two pink coconut-covered domes gleaming like winter treats. Snowball cakes were the darling of the processed snack boom, their marshmallow shells hiding soft chocolate sponge beneath. They were convenient, colorful, and perfectly portable, childhood wrapped in plastic. Yet behind their commercial shine lay something tender, the nostalgia of handmade desserts, once shared at holidays and school fairs. These factory-made sweets were mass-produced comfort, a sugary echo of the past. As tastes shifted toward natural ingredients, the snowball faded, but its memory endures in every retro bakery and old-fashioned candy aisle. One bite still carries the warmth of simpler times and the innocence of believing sweetness could fix anything. From the elegant Watergate cake to this playful snack, our journey ends where all food stories truly begin, with memory, comfort, and the unshakable hunger to remember where we came from. As our journey through these forgotten recipes comes to a close, one truth remains. Food has always been more than nourishment. It's memory, it's survival. It's the language of love, passed from one generation to the next. From the golden crust of skillet cornbread to the playful sweetness of Tang Pie, every dish carried a story of family tables, quiet resilience, and the deep roots that connect us to the land itself. These meals were born from creativity, from scarcity, from hope, and somehow they still taste like home. Maybe your grandmother baked one of these. Maybe you've only heard the stories. But somewhere in every kitchen, these flavors are still waiting to be remembered. Which of these dishes brought back a memory for you? Was it a smell, a sound, or a taste you'd almost forgotten? Tell us in the comments. Your stories keep these traditions alive. And if you believe these memories deserve to be shared, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Because as long as we keep telling these stories, the spirit of America's kitchens and the people who cooked in them will never fade away.